Running for beginners, coaching high-achieving women, and more with our coach, Robin Kiddy. All right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of the Here to Evolve podcast. We have a special guest today. Josh is not with us, but I am joined by our coach, Robin, who works with us at SD Evolution. She's an amazing coach, and she is here to chat about a few really important topics, and I'm excited to chat with her. But I'm going to let her introduce herself, and this is going to be the first of our little coaching series. So Robin is number one. We're going to be joined by Haley, Kara, and Sienna over the upcoming weeks, just so you guys can get to know our team a little bit more, and just it's not just Josh and I. We want to start including people, and it starts with our SD fam. So, hi, Robin. Hi. Don't be nervous. We're literally just gonna have a nice little girl chat here. Yeah. But kind of give us, for anyone listening who maybe doesn't follow you or doesn't know like anybody on our team, like give them the cliff notes of who you are.
Okay, so I'll try to keep this short and sweet. So a little about me. Born and raised in Connecticut here, just like Alessandra and Josh.
Obviously,
actually
sitting here.
I'm sitting here in their podcast area. But born and raised in Connecticut, and I grew up in a small farm town. Of course, I feel like it's all farm towns in Connecticut
all
here.
Farm.
I mean, everywhere you look, there's a farm.
Mm-hmm.
It just stinks all the time.
Yeah, welcome to, that's like the one thing that we have, that's like, I don't know. There's nothing else here besides that. Like, people don't come
Farms.
here. Yeah. You don't come to Connecticut to visit ever.
No. I went to UConn for my undergrad. I graduated in 2015. I graduated with a dual degree, actually. I was the first person at UConn to graduate with both of these degrees just because it's time consuming. I just ended up doing it. It just timed out perfectly. So I have a degree in athletic training. So if anybody's not familiar with that, it's more like the sports medicine side of things. Think about if you, like, football's on right now. So if one of the athletes gets injured on the field, I would be the one to run out, like the khaki pants, the fanny pack. I'd be running out onto the field full sprint to help that athlete. But that's not all that athletic trainers do. We do a lot of rehab, strength conditioning stuff on the side a little bit sometimes, depending on, athletic trainer's background, but it's usually acute injury management and also long-term injury management, and a little bit in between there. I feel like athletic trainers play a really broad role in everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I remember being so excited, like reading through your application to work with us. Like, first of all, seeing that you majored in both of these things at the same time, it was like, oh shit, like we need her. But then, like, being an athletic trainer, I think is so valuable, because how many clients do we have who come to us with like some sort of injury that they that they cannot do any type of exercise? And we'll get into this maybe a little bit later, but just that alone makes you such an awesome coach and an awesome member of our team, because I think that's just such a big myth that has been going around, rather, that people think, oh, I'm injured, I can't do anything, but you've opened that door for so many of our people, and I'm excited to talk about that. Yeah. Not to cut you off, but go ahead.
And then my other degree that I got was a bachelor's in exercise science. And with that exercise science degree, I actually my concentration was in strength and conditioning. I think there were multiple different things that you can kind of concentrate on, but I really focused on the strength and conditioning aspect. I worked with a lot of Division I athletes there, and it was just an awesome experience to be at a big D1 university like UConn. So I graduated in 2015. After that, I worked per diem as an athletic trainer, working at various high schools, and I was under the contract of an orthopedic clinic, various high schools, and then a Division III college at that time. After that, I actually got a job at the Coast Guard Academy. So the U.S. Coast Guard Academy is here in New London, Connecticut. It's a 4-year, I guess we could say, like a military, I don't know how to explain it, but military college, essentially. Mm-hmm. So the cadets come in, they're joining the Coast Guard at that time, and then they graduate a specific rank. And I was the research coordinator for this large concussion study that was partnering with the NCAA and the Department of Defense. It was called the CARE Consortium, and I was a research coordinator for them. So my role there was to baseline test all of the current cadets and the incoming ones for concussion, baselines, just kind of seeing like how are they when they're healthy, so that if a concussion does occur, then I test them again and get that data point, how long is recovery, etc., and just kind of monitoring the athlete throughout their process there. And all of that research that I did there and all the data that I got there was put into how to make sports better, across the board, not only with NCAA, but also military, right? And the military and their demands too. It was really, really interesting. They actually started testing a specific helmet, which I think is something that's out now.
Cool.
I forget what it was, but they put certain sensors inside the helmet when I was there, and then it would like kind of trigger a certain amount of like velocity or whatever it was at that point.
That's
I can't remember
crazy.
exactly, but it was just really, really neat. But then I got bored. A typical me, right?
Typical Robin.
But again, it goes into that like high achieving thing. It's like I felt like I needed to do all of the things, and I was like, I need to do more. Like I have to do more. And then I went into law enforcement.
Switching hard right turn.
I casually became a police officer. And that's what I did for almost 5 years. After that, I maintained my athletic training certification because that's very important to me, and I always wanted to keep that knowledge. And while I was in law enforcement, I actually, again, I wanted to do more. So there's this, I guess we'll call it a field. So to become a drug recognition expert. And essentially what that is, you think of people driving impaired and you think of just alcohol, right? But there's a lot of other ways we can be impaired while we operate a motor vehicle. And so my role was that to figure out what else somebody else was on. So any sort of drugs out of the 7 drug categories that there are.
Oh, wow.
So that was really intensive training. There's only 60, at the time there was 60 DREs in the state of Connecticut, and I was one of them. Again, it's like that, always got to do something, it was really cool because
that is actually really cool.
I got to evaluate people, and I got to kind of get down to what I really, really loved is like figuring out what's going on with the human body. So part of the DRE process or the evaluation process of, say, somebody comes in, they're arrested under the influence, but there's not alcohol on board, like something else is wrong. I'd come in and I'd evaluate them, and part of the process is like taking blood pressure, looking at pupil size, pulse, different things like that, like their muscle tone, how well they do on this specific series of tests that they do, the standardized field sobriety test, but also more. And I think that was like my favorite thing because I got to really like think a little bit harder.
Yep.
And figure out, okay, what are these people on?
But also kind of use your background that you've got from school. And I think it weirdly parallels with coaching, like in a weird way.
It does, a little bit.
It does, because like a lot of our job, and we'll go into this, is just like assessing where someone's at when they start with us and figuring out, okay, how do I take all of these pieces of the puzzle and figure out how to get this person to where they want to be. Obviously, different aspect, but there's some parallels there for sure.
There are, and I think I just really loved evaluating people and like just learning about the human body. It's just so incredible, and that was always my favorite part. In undergrad, I would tell my professor, my mentor, I was like, I love the evaluation part. Like I love figuring things out and coming up with a solution afterwards. So then I was in law enforcement, and I ended up, I had my daughter, Amelia, and the transition back to work was just very difficult for me.
And this was mid-pandemic,
This
correct?
was, so I was pregnant with Amelia in 2020.
Okay.
And then I ended up leaving law enforcement October of 2021. Yep, so it was still, things were happening. It was just a hard transition back for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
And my husband is also in law enforcement, and it was just you know, I was working day shift, he works midnights, there's order-ins, there's, you know, overtime that you have to do. Like and you can't plan on what's gonna happen during your shift.
Right.
Are you gonna have to stay later because something happened and you have to write something up quickly, or you're dealing with somebody? You know, you can't just, okay, bye. You know, you're in the middle of dealing with, you know, a person in the public, and you can't just be like, okay, I have to go pick up my daughter now.
Right. And
I'll just leave you here.
But at the same time, then it's like, well, I have to go pick up my, like,
I've gotten
there's
phone
lots
calls.
of pieces of the puzzle that are moving parts, and it's like you're being pulled in a million different directions.
It was so hard and so stressful, and I would constantly bring homework with me, and it was just like, you know, in terms of like mentally.
Yeah.
And I couldn't feel present with Amelia.
Right.
You know, I couldn't really be there when I'm so stressed about everything else that's been happening at work with like casework and logistics and different things, and trying to be on work on time, because Trevor doesn't get home in time for me to be able to leave the house in time to get Amelia to daycare that opens up at 7, but I have to be in roll call at 7.
And not only just that, but trying to, you know, focus on your own health and fitness journey and fit in meal prep and training and like all of the pieces that all of our clients deal with. So I know you have such a big heart in working with fellow shift workers, fellow high achieving moms. You know, this is like your area of expertise because you've lived it. It's not just, okay, you know, we understand, like, you understand completely what goes on. So I think you being able to relate to all of our nurses, all of our police officers, anybody who has kind of those crazy business hours is it's a golden nugget, because it's one thing to say like, oh, I get it, but when you've lived it, and when you've lived it with a little baby and being in the pandemic and all of the other things, you've literally been there, done that. So let's kind of shift gear. I mean, that was kind of your story. Well, and then obviously you now work for us. She is not still a shift worker. She is not a police officer. She applied, I don't even know when the exact date was, but I remember you applied and I was like, okay, well, Robin's going to be working with us, because like we wanted to meet you first. Obviously we met over Zoom. We were living at my parents' house at the time, waiting for this house to be built. And I remember like getting off Zoom and being to Josh, like she just fits with us. Like all of our coaches provide such a unique individual value to the team. And I remember just being like, she just also jives with us, like personality wise. Like I remember you were making jokes a little bit on the interview, and I know you said you were so nervous, which didn't come across that way at all. But we're so grateful to have you, and at this point you've worked with hundreds of clients and have helped transform hundreds of lives. But like I said, you really love working with those shift workers, fellow moms, high achieving women in business or just with whatever their career is, struggling to make all of those pieces of the puzzle mesh and blend for their life. So let's talk about that a little bit and kind of just shift gears into what you love to do with our people. So as somebody who's been there, done that, what would you say is like the biggest struggle people have when it comes to like balancing all of the things? Like I know there's a lot, but like maybe name one or two.
I think the first thing is like work-life balance. Right? And everybody thinks that you have to have this balance in your life where everything has to be like equal parts, where it's like 100% in all these areas. And I see that happening because, again, when you have these people that come in and they're like, you know, that perfectionist mindset, and if one thing is like 98% in one area, it's like, no, like I can't have that. Like the alarms are sounding off. So I would say the biggest thing that the struggle that comes up is being able to recognize that like balance is not being able to do it all. It's having that sense of fulfillment in the things that you are doing, right? It's not having equal parts everywhere. It's just making sure you can put like emphasis on different parts that you want to, even each day. Like it differs each day, especially as a parent, maybe a shift worker, whatever, right? I think that's the biggest thing, is just recognizing that you can't, like you feel like you have to do it all, And I'm not saying you can't do it all, because you absolutely can, but it's just going to be looking different, and you have to like have that sense of fulfillment. That's balance, right? Balance is, I would actually argue that balance is not achievable, because it's not something that is like set in stone. Balance is something that is always changing.
Right.
Each day, each week, each year.
Yeah.
And it's more about like, okay, maybe I have to tip the scale a little bit one way so I can get the stuff on the other scale, and then kind of going back and forth. But I would say that's like number one thing that I talk about with a lot of my clients, especially as they come in and they're like guns blazing, they're like, let's freaking go.
Right.
You know, let's get it all done. And like maybe the first week they're like, yes, I did everything perfect. And I'm like, okay. And I gotta wait for the ball to drop on the other end. You know, I encourage, but then, you know, I don't say like, hey, everything's gonna go to shambles in about a week for you, but I like already know the timeline. I'm like, give them a couple weeks, and then things are gonna start to be a little bit more difficult, because it's, you know, you get that fresh start, that excitement, and maybe at the time that you signed up for coaching, things are just, you know, maybe you had a little bit more time that week, and then things start to, I don't want to say fall apart, but you know,
life happens.
Difficult. Life happens,
and that's,
you know?
I think that's something that a lot of people sort of misinterpret with coaching, is that they think they need to have all their ducks in a row in order to sign up for coaching.
Oh no.
I don't think we've had one client who has been like that, and that's literally why we're here though, right? So that's something we talk about a lot on the podcast, is adjusting your expectations and understanding that yes, consistency is important, but it doesn't need to be perfect 100% of the time to see progress. And that's a hard pill to swallow.
It is.
For a lot of people. Before, you kind of mentioned how you said when you were doing police officer stuff, you would bring things home mentally. Like the mental load of work would come home with you. I think that's something shift workers in general struggle. I think of like our nurses right off the bat.
Yeah.
You know, it's really easy to bring things home with you and allow that to impact the rest of your day, or just, I mean, even just mentally allow that to impact your stress level. So what are like a couple concrete things you can give our listeners who maybe they're shift workers, they struggle with this? How do we break that? How do we separate work and home? And I know it's not as cut and dry as like, okay, follow steps 1 through 3 and we're good. But what is an actionable step they can take to start to just be more aware of it, at least?
So I think to be more aware of this happening, because sometimes you don't, right? You are not aware that this is happening, but if you find yourself coming home in like the worst mood, if you find yourself distracted, wanting to alleviate some sort of discomfort, you know, maybe like a lot of shift workers turn to alcohol, right? And that's why there's a substance abuse problem in like law enforcement or, you know, first responders and stuff like that, is because, you know, you come home and you can't handle what had happened, so you just kind of want to just like let it go, right? So the first key is definitely awareness and recognizing like, how do I feel right now? Like leaving work, and actually when you walk through the door of your home, just kind of like taking a breath and almost like mentally hitting that reset button and be like, you know what? No, I'm home now. Because sometimes, you know, there's a lot of shift workers out there that don't have kids.
Right.
But for example, if you do have kids, you walk through the door or you pick your kid up from daycare, it's like that cue of like, I have my kid in my hands now, or I see them running towards me at the door. Like that's like, okay, that's my cue to be present.
Yeah.
You know, be here now.
Yep.
You know, something that could also be beneficial is, you know, just, you know, breath work, you know, just journaling. You know, journaling could be great, just taking a step out. I think all of those things really just boil down to being present.
Yeah.
Right? Working on mindfulness. And it's less about trying to figure it out in that moment, and more about utilizing the tools that you learn through mindfulness practice along the way that are going to be helpful, right? Like you said, there's no, like, you're not going to be able to just walk through the door and just like, okay, everything's fine. Like nothing happened at work today. But when you practice mindfulness throughout your week, it becomes less of a burden on you when you are at home, because you're able to kind of snap out of that and be like, nope, I'm home. I need to be more present. I need to practice the tools that I've been learning in my mindfulness practices throughout the week and actually apply it now
No, I love that. And I think that ties really well into obviously what we talk a lot about on the podcast of our 5 pillars, right? So yes, we're training and nutrition coaches, but we're also so much more than that. And a big part of what we do is that mindset work. And this is a great example of how having a coach can help you navigate through, like, it's not your job to help somebody navigate through their work life. Like, it is your job, but like their work stuff, like you don't need to carry that for them. But at the same time, we're going to do what we can to help you become better all around, not just in your training or not just with your nutrition. So that brings me to asking you the question, you know, what is your favorite thing about being a coach? Like, why coaching after all of these career changes? And obviously, hopefully you're happy. I think you're happy. But, you know, what do you love most about being a coach?
I think, you know, from the client perspective, I think my favorite part is getting to help these people get their lives back, right? We have so many people that come to us and they're like, maybe they've tried different programs before, or they've never been educated on anything nutrition in their entire lives, which in our world, that's like, how?
Right.
You know, we're so used to it. And it's like, wow, we really you really don't know, you know, what different things are. And it's like, wow, it's so hard to kind of like think that's still a thing, but it means that we still have a lot of work to do and whatnot. But my favorite thing is when people get their lives back, when moms are able to be more present with their kids and they're able to find that confidence again. And they're like, I accept my body with where it's at, or they're finding confidence in their jobs and they're like, their mental health is good because they're taking care of themselves. Another thing is like when people have that aha moment and they're just like, they're like, wow, this is what it's supposed to feel like.
Right.
Like flexibility with their nutrition, like not having to feel like they have to track everything meticulously or track it all.
Right.
To lead a healthier lifestyle, and like recognizing that it takes a lot of work to get to that point, but it's not something that, you know, once you get there and once you get to the other side of it, you're like, maintaining this is not so bad.
Yeah.
You know, and you can actually do these things for the rest of your life. And I think that's my favorite part about coaching is just, you know, just in general, just these people getting their lives back as a result of it, or just improving their lives like completely. Not that they're getting anything back, but they're just improving.
Well, they are. They really are getting their life back a lot of the time. And it's really awesome for us to see too, just like the work that you guys are doing with all of these different types of people, because you know there's so many coaching companies out there who will post all of the transformation photos, and yeah, we have those too, but I think every coach on our team would kind of answer in that way, and we'll kind of see what the other coaches say in the upcoming weeks. But I mean, personally, that's my favorite part as well, because this, when done right, coaching like this and the way that we do it impacts every aspect of your life, and it really has that ripple effect on not only your life, but on your kids, on your spouse, on your family members, on your coworkers. Like, you could just see it bleed into everybody surrounding this person that we've helped. And that's really our mission, is to help as many people as we can. So if we're helping this one person and that one person is bleeding into all of those other areas, like, it's just really cool to think like the bigger picture of what we do. So I love that answer. All right, I want to segue into just a little bit. I want you to share a little bit about your health journey, because I know you've been on a journey there. So that's an understatement. So kind of bring us up to speed on, you know, what you've gone through, where you're at now, what that's looking like.
Okay, so for those that don't know anything about me and don't follow me on my Instagram, I talk about it a lot on my Instagram and give little updates here and there. But when I was 21, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called ulcerative colitis. And back then, you're 21. You just keep doing what you're doing, and you like take some medicine. You're like, yeah, I'm fine. you know, whatever, don't care. And then, you know, I was pretty well managed. There were lots of years where I didn't have to be on medicine for, you know, I don't know how, because I was still like, I was drinking alcohol. I was not taking care of myself. I was working multiple jobs and putting myself, like, not paying for my school, but like working through school and things like that. And it wasn't until recently where it got really, really bad. So after I had Amelia, I still had flare-ups here and there. And they're pretty debilitating. So I'm not going to go into the symptoms because it's just a stomach problems.
I mean, I think people can...
If you Google it, it's bad. And it just wrecks you, right? You get afraid to eat food. You're really low energy. Just anxiety's really, really high because of it. It's just really, really bad. So I was touch and go after I had Amelia a little bit. Some flare-ups, but managed with some sort of medicine. But eventually that medicine it gave me drug-induced lupus. And I'm like, great, here we go.
Here's another thing to add to the list.
And I just added to the list. So I had to stop taking that. And I was okay. I started being gluten and dairy free, which helped significantly. And now I'm not saying that you have to be gluten and dairy free. Don't. Please don't. You don't want it, trust me. But if you have to, then you have to.
Yeah.
But for me, that's what worked for me. Hint, hint. And, my blood work started improving. My inflammation markers were super low. Everything was like good to go. And then a little bit after that, I ended up being in the worst flare-up of my whole life. It lasted almost a year. I tried a more holistic approach. And unfortunately, I think I was just too far into my flare-up to be helped. I think I couldn't do it anymore. I was just really in a bad spot. I couldn't exercise. My anxiety was just so high. I couldn't eat. I was not healthy at all. I think I lost 8 pounds at that point, like in my worst spot in like a very, very short amount of time. And it's kind of like you're just very sick. So at that point I kind of ghosted my doctor for a little bit because of this, because I was really scared of going on the medicine that she was asking me to go on, because it's a biologic, which don't ghost your doctors. Just don't do it. Learn from my mistakes. And I ended up starting a medicine called Entyvio, and it's an infusion. I have to do it every 8 weeks. I think they're looking into non-infusion options, but either way I have to sit in this room and get it. It takes like an hour. I was really scared to do it. I really did not want this medicine in my body. But then I had to accept it. And now, a year and a half later, I'm so grateful for it. I am a different human being because of it. Not only because of the medicine, but because of the lifestyle that I lead too, right? I haven't had alcohol in a year and a half. I don't plan to probably maybe ever again. My husband doesn't drink either. He hasn't drank in forever, like 10 plus zillion years. I don't know. He's never drank around me, and we've been together for a long time. So, and I exercise, I eat well. Like I try to manage my stress as much as I can. So I do all these things that I ask of my clients to do, because it's so important to do, even when you're feeling poorly, because that's what builds you up. But now I am exercising regularly again. I'm training in the gym. I miss it so much. Last year I was doing band exercises outside. I was getting some vitamin D. I was getting some sunshine. And like last year at this time, it's like crazy to think about. I was just working on banded exercises, just trying to move.
Well, I think it speaks to phases of life, right? Like how we're always ebbing and flowing throughout every aspect of our lives. So we have to obviously control our controllables, but you also didn't let that completely deter you from the basics either, which I think is really important and a great lesson for all of our people listening. Yeah, it looked a lot different. Like you weren't able to do your basic strength training, which sucks. It sucks. And I'm sure that impacts mental health. It impacts everything. But instead of choosing to just not do anything, you focused on what you could, and you eventually went back to your doctor, got on the medicine, and look at you now, like completely world of a difference. Like it's incredible. So I think that is just an awesome story, and I think people can relate to that. I know you and Josh really on a lot of levels, even though it's different than Barrett's, like a lot of the digestive stuff and just how it makes you feel mentally, and the anxiety, and just not being on meds that you don't want to be on, but also like accepting what you need when you need help. So there's a lot of parallels to you and Josh too. But you guys are both proof that you can both take all of the knowledge in the world and take the time to work through these things and come out on the other side of it. Yeah. And now you're not only strength training, you're also running.
I'm a runner now.
You're a runner. So I really am excited to talk about this topic, obviously because running is so like, we're in a running boom right now. Yeah, everybody is running.
But that's a good thing.
That's a great thing.
Yes.
But past you would have not said that, because you've written, what was it? It was a paper, or was it like
it was a term paper. Yeah, it was 10, I think 12. I uploaded it yesterday, and I read some parts of it. I was like, oh my gosh, it was 12 pages.
So Robin wrote a paper trying to prove that running was just bad for you.
Bad for you. Like you're
because you hated running so much.
Yes, I hated it. I hated it so much, and I don't know where. I guess I could figure out where some of that hatred came from. Probably just thinking that you have to run to like lose weight, blah blah blah, you know. But I hated it so much. I wrote a 12-page term paper thesis, right? Why not to run. Like, I think the title was like not saying that, but my hypothesis in the beginning was like, don't run, you will die.
You will die.
With research to back up why you will die.
Which is a great example of how people can cherry pick research to support any claim out there. So let that be a lesson for you guys listening. Whatever you see on the internet, do your own research for. But with running, like, first of all, I think we all kind of were in that boat of like, at one point when we first started our fitness journeys, we thought we had to do it, and we thought we had to do hours of cardio to see progress, blah, blah, blah. We talk about this all the time. And then it kind of flip-flopped after that, industry-wide, where people were just hating on cardio. Do you remember that? Like, probably circa 2015-ish.
That's the paper. That's when I wrote
so
my
there
paper.
we go.
2015.
I was on point with the year. But that was the time in the industry where people were just like, cardio will kill your gains, cardio, like, don't do it, like, and it was just, that was the mass message. So you were in alignment there. Really? But now you're training for a half marathon.
Yep.
You have run a couple races already. You've done a few 5Ks, a 10K, right? Or not a 10K yet.
Was it 6K? Is it 4 miles?
It was more than a 5K.
Yeah.
So why start running? And kind of just tell us your journey there a little bit.
So I remember, it was earlier this year, I was actually you're like, let's all do the Mystic, the Mystic with 5K?
10K.
Or 10K. It was the Mystic 10K. I was like, okay. And I think you were just kind of like rallying the troops.
I feel like that's like one of those things you blindly are like, okay, sure, and then you like it doesn't hit you till later. Like, what did I just say okay to?
Yeah, we did it. I didn't end up running it.
That's okay though, because look at you now.
I know, and I was like, there's no way I could have ran. I mean, I probably could have, but like I would have been in rough shape running 6 miles.
You were not doing any running before.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
And then you started, did you do the begin program?
Yeah, I did. Starting in, I think it was towards the end of March.
Okay.
My husband and I both just started.
Yeah.
And we started the begin programming in the SDE app.
Yeah. Which is our walk run program. Yeah. So it's very beginner friendly. It's not like one of those beginner programs that's like, okay, go run 3 miles. And you're like, what?
Okay. I'll tell you, it has to be beginner friendly for somebody like me.
Yeah.
Who has, like, I'm very much, like, I'm just a slower runner. I didn't love running before, clearly. So I was like, all right, well, we'll try it, right? And we stuck with it. And it was the perfect, like, beginner program for us. And then we moved on to the Extend program. And now we're moving on to the half marathon program.
Crazy.
And we ran the 5Ks in between. I did like this Disney online 5K challenge thing.
That's what I was thinking of. That was cool.
Yeah, there was like 3 5Ks you had to run in a certain amount of time. And you get like all these medals. Yes, it's on like an online thing, but I still did it. I still did it in person, like outdoors.
I think the pandemic really pushed for a lot of races to be more like that. Like, 'cause I don't think that wasn't really a thing before COVID, where you could just kind of, like, maybe it was, but not to the extent that it is now, which I think is really cool. Like, even the Mystic 10K that I did, people could do it virtually, which I think is awesome and so inclusive. Because if you don't live near somewhere that has races and you still want to do something, you can do it. But talk about like what was the thing that made you say, oh, like one day, like I'm gonna go run. I know it was like I kind of gave you some inspo there, but was there anything else that was like, because to go from like I hate running, I'm writing a 12-page paper about why you should not do it to now running a half, that's like a big jump.
I think it was just getting my health back and proving to myself I am healthy again.
Yeah.
My body is healthy.
Because you could have not have done this a year ago.
No. I could barely like handle my day of just like handling a toddler and work, right? It was just exhausting. Like going for a walk would be like too much, I just didn't have enough energy.
Right.
It's crazy to think that where I am now, honestly, but I think it's more of like it's like a mix between like empowerment and also like continuing to prove to myself like I am healthy. Yeah. Like I can do this. Because there's obviously a lot of health anxiety that can come in and be like, okay, well, it's like you could either crumble and just choose not to do anything because you're afraid of like a potential flare-up because of inflammation or doing too much too soon or something like that, or you can continue to put yourself out there and prove to yourself that like I am capable, I can do this, I can run, I am healthy, like there's nothing wrong with me right now. Yeah. And I think that's just like I continue to feed off of that feeling of like health and just feeling good.
It just feels
so good
to go and like run and then finish and you're like, I just did that. Like,
right? And
I think that's really a big part of why it's such a boom right now is people are realizing like cardio makes you feel good.
It does.
Believe it or not. When you're done, not always during, but when you're done, it really does. Like I went for a run yesterday for the first time in a couple of weeks and it was like I was dreading it the whole time, but then once I'm out there I'm like, oh, like this feels great, like I'm happy. So I think that's awesome. And for anyone listening who's maybe they want to start running or they're somebody who is of the mindset like I hate running, I'll do it but I hate it so much, what's like, is there something that you think makes people hate it so much? Is it like truly like a form issue? Is it the way they go about it? Or is it just, I don't know, what do you think? Why do so many people hate running? Because it's like there's a lot of people who hate running.
So I think there's so many different reasons for this, but I think the main few are when we were, we're maybe even late teens, early 20s, we thought of cardio or running as like punishment. Or feeling as if like, okay, I ate too much today, I'm gonna go run. Yeah. Different things like that, and like running your body into the ground, and you're just like end up hating it because you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Right. You're not doing it for the right reasons. Another thing is like you do too much too soon. Yes. You expect way too much of yourself, and you go out there and you're like, okay, yeah, like the beginner programs that are just like run 3 miles. It's like, what beginner can just run? True beginner can't just go out there and run 3 miles. Right. It would be like too much, and then you'd be walking and you'd be like, oh great, like I can't run it, and then you get like pissed off
and
you just
give up. Failure. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people do that. Like even if they can run 3 miles, they're going out way too fast every single time. Like they're literally like running a race pace for their entire training cycle of every single run. And I think that's very common amongst like just recreational runners, like people who do races or not. Like you just go out for a run and you just run as fast as possible every single time. That just sounds like horrible.
Terrible. That sounds terrible to me. I wouldn't survive that.
No, and I would hate running still too if I did that. But there is so much power in doing it the right way and following a program. You can still progress and get faster. Like your pace has improved a lot since you guys started.
I was at a 12, so my husband and I, Trevor and I, we all like 90% of our runs are together. Yeah. I think we were at a 12-30 minute mile pace earlier, even in the summer.
Okay. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, in the summer. And then now we are, for 5.5 miles, we're at like 11-minute mile pace. And it's like, whoa.
That's a whole...
Like, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Sometimes I look down at my watch.
Off of your mile.
Yeah. Sometimes I look down at my watch and I'm like, whoa. Yeah. Like one time I looked down and I saw below 10 And I was like, no way. I was like, I'm so fast.
But
that doesn't last.
That's proof in the pudding that even running slow to most people's standards, and to your own standards probably, can make you faster. And it's about building that base. And that's, a lot of people miss that. And I think so many more people would enjoy running if they did it in a way that's actually like productive. So I'm so excited for you for the upcoming races and for all that you've got going on. I think we touched on a lot of stuff today.
We did.
You know, we touched on your biggest struggle, but let's just kind of close it off with, if you could give the listeners one of your favorite pieces of advice. Nothing, I'm not going to ask you like a weird, like someone asked me once on a podcast, it was like one of those weird questions of like, would you rather fight 100 ducks or like one, I don't know, you don't even know, you know what I'm talking about though, like one of those strange questions, and I was like so caught off guard, and I was like, I don't know. I'm not going to do that to you. Just give like generic piece of advice. It could be specific to shift workers, whatever you want to give them, like one thing that they can take with them today.
Okay. I would say it'd be learn to be uncomfortable letting go.
I love that.
I think that would be the number one thing.
I love that because it's required.
It is required for all of us type A, perfectionists, high achieving people out there. You have to learn to let go of everything. You can't control it all. Trust me. And when you start to, it'll all just pile on top of you and feel so stressful.
Eventually it will crumble.
Yep.
Well, I'm so glad that we got to do this in person too.
Yeah, I know.
It makes me happy. If you guys want to follow Robin, I'll put her Instagram in the show notes of the podcast. We will put our coaching application if you want to work with Robin, and if you're inspired and you're like, oh my gosh, I need this person in my corner after hearing her story. Maybe you're a fellow shift worker or just high achieving mom or whoever you are, this is your girl. So I'll put our coaching application in the description also, and then basically on that form you can just request to work with Robin and just say, you know, you listened to her on the podcast, let us know. But thanks for coming on. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, you guys, we will catch you in the next episode later. Josh always does the ending, so I don't know what to say.